Welcome to another deep dive. This time all about making sure you avoid those common pitfalls when it comes to hiring Laravel developers.
It's a jungle out
It
there.
really is. So let's get you prepped with the insider knowledge right.
Sounds good.
Today we're diving deep into a guide called Common Mistakes to Avoid When You Hire Laravel Developers. Just a quick reminder for anyone who's maybe just tuning in, Laravel, it's a popular PHP framework, and it's known for building those really robust web applications. Think like bustling e-commerce sites or those really intricate systems, the kind that make corporations tick. All right, let's jump into mistake number one. And this one is so tempting, skipping those technical assessments. I get it, I really do. Going through resumes and portfolios, it feels like a marathon, but trust me, this is one step you can't skip.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get caught up. You've got a charming candidate.
Yeah.
Or maybe a beautifully designed portfolio. And it's so easy to just kind of gloss over the technical detail.
Yeah, totally.
But I've got a story for you. I once worked on this project, and the developer, their resume said they were an expert in API development. This was in Laravel, of course. On paper, everything looked great, but when it came to actually building out the API, their knowledge, well, it was surface level at best.
Oh, no.
We ended up having to bring in a completely, a whole other developer just to refactor their work, which set us back weeks. And, I mean, it just blew our budget.
Oof. I can just imagine that is like the nightmare scenario. So how can people listening avoid falling into that same trap?
All right, think of it like this. If you were hiring a chef, you wouldn't just, take their word for it that they can make this, amazing 5-course meal, right? You would want to see them in action, right?
Yeah.
Maybe even have them prepare, a sample dish.
Yeah, for sure. Make sure they're not all talk.
Exactly. It's the same with developers. You've got to see their skills in action.
Okay, so what does a good technical assessment look like then when you're hiring a Laravel developer specifically?
Well, it all boils down to testing their knowledge. You want to see if they know those core Laravel features, the ones that are really crucial for building those robust applications.
Okay, give us some examples.
So you might give them a challenge, something that involves routing, how different URLs map to specific parts of your application.
Okay.
Or you could test their understanding of middleware. Think of it like a series of checks and filters that happen before a request reaches its final destination.
Got it.
And of course, you want to see how well they grasp Eloquent ORM. That's Laravel's powerful system for interacting with databases.
Eloquent ORM. That sounds pretty intimidating.
It might sound complex, but it's really designed to make things a whole lot easier.
Okay.
Imagine you've got this massive library, right?
Mm-hmm.
But instead of having to search through those dusty shelves yourself, you have a librarian, someone who knows exactly where every single book is, and they can just retrieve it instantly for you. That's basically what Eloquent does. It lets you interact with your database, but in a clear and efficient way.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So a solid technical assessment, it should really put their Laravel chops to the test.
Absolutely. All right, so we've tackled the importance of technical assessments. Let's move on to another really critical factor, and that is relevant project experience. It's one thing to know the ins and outs of Laravel, but it's a whole other thing to have actually used those skills to build, those real-world projects.
Oh, yeah, totally agree.
Right.
Imagine this, you're building a really complex e-commerce platform.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to hire a developer who's only ever built, those simple, brochure websites.
Maybe not.
You know.
You'd want someone who's, they've already kind of navigated those complexities, those online stores, payment gateways, security, inventory management, that whole 9 yards.
It's like they've been there, done that, got the T-shirt.
Exactly. Their past experience, it's a really strong indicator of whether they can handle the challenges, the ones that your project is going to, kind of throw their way.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So if, let's say, I'm looking for a Laravel developer, right? How do I even begin to, assess whether their experience is actually relevant to my specific project?
Well, you got to start by looking at their portfolio, at those past projects. Have they worked on stuff similar in scope and complexity to yours? Have they dealt with the same technologies, or tackled similar challenges?
Okay, what if you can't find someone who's done exactly the same type of project? What are the key transferable skills that you look for?
That's a great question. Even if they haven't built the exact same thing, you can still look for like evidence, right? Evidence that they can learn, that they can adapt. Maybe they've worked on something, let's say a project that involved a really complex user authentication system
Okay.
that shows that they can handle security, that they can handle user management. Or maybe they've built an API that integrates with third-party services that shows they can work with different systems, that they can work with different data formats.
So it's not always about finding like that perfect match. It's more about kind of looking for those underlying skills, those underlying experiences, the things that translate well to your specific needs.
Exactly.
And speaking of team dynamics, soft skills, they played a huge role in how well a new developer integrates into an existing team. And that leads us to mistake number 3, ignoring those soft skills and team fit. We've all been there. You've got a project, there's a deadline looming, and you just, you need to get someone in the door ASAP.
It's tempting. It's so tempting to just focus on those technical skills, just rush through that whole hiring process. But I've seen it. I've seen how disastrous it can be when you overlook those all-important soft skills.
Oh, tell me about it. I once worked with this developer, and they were, an absolute coding genius, but they were a nightmare to communicate with.
Oh no, what happened?
Oh, they would just disappear for days, miss deadlines, and their code, I swear, it was so complex that no one else could understand it.
That was like trying to decipher like ancient hieroglyphics.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And, they might have been brilliant coders, but that lack of communication skills, the inability to work like effectively with the team, it completely derailed the project.
Yeah, sounds rough. So what are some of those essential soft skills that you should be looking for in a Laravel developer?
Communication is key. Can they explain, those complex technical concepts, but do it clearly and concisely? Can they effectively collaborate with others, both within that development team, but also with other stakeholders?
Yeah, that's so important. And what about problem solving? That feels like a big one, right?
Huge. When things, inevitably go wrong, because let's face it, can they think critically? Can they troubleshoot effectively? Can they come up with, creative solutions? So it sounds like you're describing a developer who's not just a coder, but a true team player. Someone who can not only write great code, but also communicate, collaborate, and, solve those problems alongside their colleagues.
Exactly.
Okay. Finding that perfect blend of technical expertise and soft skills, that can make all the difference. All right. Let's shift gears and talk about a mistake that can be incredibly tempting, but ultimately so costly. Prioritizing cost over quality. And that brings us to mistake number 4.
Yeah, I get it. It's totally understandable to be mindful of your budget, especially when you're like a startup or working on a limited budget.
Yeah, for sure.
But when it comes to software development, remember this. You often get what you pay for.
Oh, 100%. I've definitely learned that lesson the hard way.
Yeah.
I once tried to save, a few bucks by hiring a developer who offered like a ridiculously low rate. And the initial cost, it seemed amazing, but their code, oh my gosh, it was just riddled with bugs, security vulnerabilities. We ended up spending like way more time and money fixing their mistakes than we would have if we had just hired, a more experienced developer in the first place.
It always happens that way.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
It's like that old saying, penny wise and pound foolish.
Exactly.
So how can you strike that balance? That balance between finding a qualified Laravel developer and staying within your budget?
Think of it as an investment, not just an expense.
Okay.
A skilled Laravel developer might have, a higher hourly rate, but their expertise, their efficiency, it will save you time and money in the long run.
Good.
They'll be able to deliver like clean, well-documented code
Right.
and, the time that's easier to maintain, and it's going to be less prone to those pesky errors.
So that translates to fewer headaches, faster development cycles, and ultimately a higher quality product.
Exactly.
All right. We've talked about the importance of technical assessments, relevant experience, soft skills, and of course the dangers of prioritizing cost over quality. Now let's dive into a mistake that can trip up even the most seasoned hiring managers. Lack of clear communication and expectations. That brings us to mistake number 5. Imagine this. You've got this brilliant idea for a web application, right? You've hired this like super talented Laravel developer, but somewhere along the way, things just, they start to go off the rails.
Yeah. I mean, miscommunication, it can creep in at any stage of a project.
It's so frustrating.
It is. From that like initial project briefing to the ongoing development process, if expectations aren't crystal clear, you're just setting yourself up for frustration, and for potential setbacks.
Yeah, it's like trying to build a house, but without blueprints. Everyone's just kind of guessing. And the end result, it might not be what you had in mind at all.
100%.
So how can you make sure that that communication stays clear, that everybody's on the same page throughout that whole project?
First and foremost, document everything.
Oh,
Clearly define that project scope, timelines, deliverables, and any specific technical requirements.
so it's like, creating that roadmap for your developer.
Mm-hmm.
They need to know exactly where they're going and how to get there.
Exactly.
And it's not just about, like providing those instructions up front.
No, not at all. You need those regular check-ins, those feedback loops, and you've got to keep those lines of communication open, and that's throughout the entire development process.
So this way you can catch any potential issues early on, address concerns, make sure the project stays on track.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've dissected those 5 major mistakes to avoid when you're hiring Laravel developers. Now let's switch gears and talk about some actionable tips for finding the perfect match. What are some steps, some concrete steps that people can take to make sure they find the right developer for their project?
Well, that's what we'll cover in part 2. All right, let's jump into some of those actionable tips, those things you can use right away to find that perfect Laravel developer for your project.
Sounds good to me. Let's get practical.
First things first, you really need to, have a crystal clear understanding of what your project requirements are. And this means going beyond just like that vague idea of what you want to build.
Yeah.
Take the time to really define your project scope, outline those specific features, those functionalities you need, and map out like any of those technical must-haves.
It's like creating that blueprint for your project.
Yes.
The more detailed, the better. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The clearer those requirements are, the easier it's going to be to find a developer whose skills, whose experience really aligns, perfectly with your vision.
Makes sense. If you don't know what you're looking for, how can you expect to find it, right?
Right. Now, once you've got those requirements, nailed down, it's time to start looking for those potential candidates. And there are a ton of platforms and resources out there, but don't just jump into the first one you find.
Oh, yeah. Do your research, compare those different options, and choose a platform that has, a good reputation, a proven track record of connecting businesses with those skilled developers.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you're reviewing profiles and portfolios, don't just skim the surface, dig deeper, look for that evidence of their problem-solving skills, their attention to detail, their ability to write that clean, well-documented code.
It's like looking for those clues to see if they're truly a Laravel detective.
Exactly. A skilled Laravel developer will have like a portfolio that showcases their versatility, and their ability to handle those different types of projects.
And remember those soft skills we were talking about earlier? Don't forget to assess those as well during that interview process.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
No.
Technical skills are essential, but they're only part of the equation. You also need someone who can, communicate effectively, collaborate with others, and adapt to those changing circumstances.
Like finding a developer who's not just, a coding wizard, but also a team player, a problem-solving champ.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. Now, here's a pro tip. Don't be afraid to get specific with your interview questions.
Okay.
Instead of just asking those like generic questions about their experience with Laravel, really dig into their knowledge of specific tools and techniques.
Like what?
Well, for example, you could ask them about their experience with Blade templating.
Okay, and just remind us, what's that again?
Right, so Blade, it's Laravel's like powerful templating engine that makes it super easy to create those dynamic views. A skilled Laravel developer, they'll be able to talk about Blade with confidence, and they can explain how they've used it to build, that efficient, maintainable front-end code.
Got it.
Or you could ask them about their experience with Forge. Forge, it's Laravel's server management tool. It makes it incredibly easy to deploy and manage your Laravel applications, on those different server environments.
Yeah. Okay.
A developer who's comfortable with Forge, they'll be able to like really streamline your deployment process, make sure that your application runs smoothly.
Okay, got it. So it sounds like by asking those targeted questions, about these specific Laravel tools, you can really, gauge their depth of knowledge, their experience.
Exactly. It shows that you've done your homework,
Right.
and that you're looking for someone who truly knows their stuff.
Yeah, I like that.
Now, once you've, narrowed down your list of potential candidates, consider starting with like a trial project.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that.
A trial project, it's a great way to see a developer's coding style, their
Hmm.
problem-solving approach, their communication skills, and you can see it all in action before you make like that long-term commitment.
It's like a test drive for your project.
I
Exactly.
like it allows you to, get a feel for how they work, how they communicate, and whether they'd be like a good fit for your team.
Okay, makes sense. So you've got your trial project. What else?
And finally, and maybe this is the most important, foster that open communication throughout the entire hiring process.
All right.
This means, being upfront about your expectations, providing that clear feedback, and creating, like a space where the developer, they feel comfortable asking those questions, raising
They're kind
concerns.
of like building that partnership from the very beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
A strong working relationship, one that's built on trust and open communication, it's essential for any successful project.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about, the importance of defining those clear requirements, doing your research, digging deeper into those profiles, asking those targeted questions, considering those trial projects, and of course, fostering that open communication.
These are all crucial steps, those crucial steps in finding that perfect Laravel developer for your project.
But before we, move on, I want to kind of circle back to something we touched on earlier, and that's, that idea of prioritizing quality over cost.
Yeah, it's worth reiterating this because it's so fundamental
Yeah.
when it comes to software development, cutting corners to save a few bucks up front. It can often lead to like those major headaches, those major expenses down the line.
It's like building a house on a shaky foundation. It might seem okay at first, but, you know, eventually it's just going to crumble.
Exactly.
All right.
Investing in a skilled Laravel developer might mean, a larger initial investment, but it's an investment in the long-term success and the stability of your project.
They'll be able to deliver that high-quality code that's efficient, maintainable, and scalable.
Mm.
And that saves you time, it saves you money, it saves you frustration in the long run.
100%.
Now, I know, some of you listening might be thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but how do I, actually know if a developer is truly skilled? What are those, telltale signs, those things that separate, the Laravel masters from the apprentices?
That's a great question, and that's something we'll explore in more detail right after. We'll explore it now.
Okay, great. Let's do it. Let's get into it. Okay, so those telltale signs, those things that set apart those, the Laravel masters from the apprentices, walk us through it.
One of the best ways to really gauge their expertise, it's to take a close look at their portfolio, right?
Hmm.
And how they approach problem solving.
Okay, so what should we be looking for specifically when we're reviewing, a Laravel developer's portfolio?
Well, a truly skilled Laravel developer, they're going to have a portfolio that showcases like a range of projects, right? It's going to show off their versatility, their ability to handle all those different challenges.
So it's kind of like looking at an artist's portfolio. You want to see a variety of styles, techniques that they've mastered their craft.
Exactly. Look for those projects that demonstrate their understanding of those core Laravel concepts, things like routing, middleware, Eloquent ORM, the MVC architecture.
And it's not just about the quantity of projects.
Yeah.
The quality.
Yeah.
That matters even more.
Oh, absolutely. Pay attention to those details. Is the code well structured? Is it easy to read? Is it well documented? Making it easy for others to understand and maintain. These are all signs of a developer who really takes pride in their work, someone who strives for excellence.
So it's not just about looking for those flashy projects, but really kind of digging deeper, seeing how they've applied those Laravel skills to actually solve real-world problems.
Exactly.
Now, beyond the portfolio, what's another key indicator of, a skilled Laravel developer?
Their approach to problem solving.
Okay, so how can you really assess their problem-solving skills during that hiring process?
One technique, it's super effective, is to present them with a hypothetical challenge, during the interview.
Okay.
Describe a scenario that, they might encounter in a real project and just, ask them how they would approach it.
So, for example, you could say something like, imagine you're working on an e-commerce site and
Yeah.
you need to implement a really complex discount system.
Yeah.
How would you go about designing and building this feature using Laravel?
Exactly. And then listen carefully to their thought process. Do they, ask clarifying questions to really make sure they understand those requirements? Do they break down the problem into, like smaller, more manageable steps? Do they consider, different approaches and then weigh the pros and cons of each?
So these are all kind of like hallmarks of a skilled problem solver, someone who can think critically and strategically,
Right.
and don't forget to pay attention to how they actually communicate their ideas.
Oh, yeah, that's
Can they explain their thought process clearly, concisely? Can they articulate their reasoning, justify their decisions?
effective communication. It's crucial for any developer, especially when it comes to, collaborating with others, explaining those technical concepts to non-technical stakeholders.
Yeah, absolutely. A developer who can communicate effectively, they're going to be like such a valuable asset to your team.
For sure.
Now, throughout this whole deep dive, we've emphasized the importance of finding a Laravel developer who not only has, that technical expertise, but also embodies those essential soft skills, right?
Yeah, soft skills, they're often that like differentiating factor, between a good developer and a great one.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how can you gauge a developer's soft skills during that hiring process?
Yeah. Well, pay attention to their interactions,
Right.
both during the interview, but also in like any follow-up communications. Are they responsive? Are they communicative? Do they listen attentively? Do they ask like thoughtful questions? Do they seem, genuinely interested in the project and eager to contribute?
Those are all like subtle cues,
Hmm.
but they can really reveal a lot about a developer's personality, their work ethic, their ability to, collaborate effectively.
Exactly.
And remember, you're not just hiring, a coder. You're hiring a person who's going to be a part of your team.
That's so
It
important.
is. It's essential to find someone who not only has the right skills, but also like fits in well with your company culture, your company values.
It makes a huge difference.
Right. A positive, collaborative team environment. I mean, that can make all the difference in a project's success.
Oh, yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought. Hiring the right Laravel developer. It's an investment in the future of your project.
You want to find someone who aligns with your vision, who understands your goals, who can bring those ideas to life, in a way that exceeds your expectations.
So by following, those tips and insights that we've shared today, you can really navigate that Laravel hiring landscape with confidence and hopefully find that perfect developer to build your dream project. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and happy hiring, everyone.